this conversation.
Yes and no at the same time.
Well, as we get started, I would love it if you would share with the ladies listening a little bit about how you found yourself on this journey and ultimately how we met.
Great question. I have to go back a few years. So, my journey started around 2018, and it was when I split up with my ex boyfriend. Um, I was not in a great place. Like, we were just splitting up, and I was realizing that I had this desire to become a mother more than I had a desire to be in a relationship. Like, yeah, I mean, both are great, but I really, really wanted to have children. That's the moment I realized that. So I was 35 at the time, and a friend of mine had talked to me about freezing my eggs and these sort of things. And I was lucky enough to be in a good place to do that back then. So my ex-boyfriend was in Texas, so I was living there. And I flew back to Spain. Actually, I'm from Italy, but flew to Spain to freeze my eggs. And so that's where everything started. The egg freezing process, I found it easy. Everything was smooth, no problems there. So I didn't even think that I was going to have a problem getting pregnant because everything went well. And I decided to freeze some eggs. And then at the same time, I froze some embryos. For that reason, I was like, okay, I'll see what happens in my life. If I meet someone great, otherwise I'll go at it solo. We'll see. And at that point, everything was frozen and I was back living my life, enjoying it, not thinking about getting pregnant. I was like, I'll take a few more years. Like, I seem to be fine anyways. I don't think I'm going to have a problem. I was very naive. And a couple of years after, we are in 2020. And at that point, I was like, yeah, I'm ready. Now, this is the time I want to try and get pregnant. At that point, as you would know, being in 2020, there was COVID, and I was living in London. So instead of going to Spain, going back to Barcelona, I was living next to a fertility clinic, like a very good one in London. And I was like, yeah, by accident. And I was like, you know what? I will go for another round. Maybe I'll try an IUI. Like, I don't seem to have like an issue anyways. Like, doctors never told me I have. And so I'll try with like an insemination, see what happens. Otherwise, I'll take it from there. I was pretty confident I would get pregnant right away. Well, again, very naive. So here I am, 36, 37, so kind of young. Go to the fertility clinic, try the insemination, chemical pregnancy. That's all. And I'm in the middle of COVID, miscarrying by myself, right? That was a scary experience. I even thought it was an ectopic at some point. So yeah, it was very scary. Particularly, you don't want to end up in the hospital by yourself during COVID. And there was like the real emergency at that point. It was very scary. And yeah, after that, I had a couple of IUIs, didn't work. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'll go for an IVF. I'll go for another one. Well, it worked so well in Spain. My embryos are frozen there. So let's try it again. And this time, it was a bloody disaster. Like, I went for the process. We got very few eggs, only one fertilized, basically. And by day 5, it wasn't good quality. The doctor still transferred, but it was pretty clear it wasn't going to work. So at that point, the fertility clinic, well, I was heartbroken and also like I was broke. Like, I was kind of like going broke. And the doctors wanted to run some tests. And oh my God, that's where everything went south. I don't know what happened, but like in a matter of like a year and a half from my previous treatment in Spain, they started finding things that I never even heard the names of, like apparently I had adenomyosis, which I didn't even know what it was. And then I had a metabolic issue, maybe insulin resistant, which apparently makes it difficult to get pregnant. And I had scarring in my uterus. Like the more tests, the more issues. And I got at a point that I started to panic. And I thought, okay, maybe this isn't happening for me. I thought it was going to be easy, but particularly when I had the adenomyosis um, diagnosis, I never thought of that. And I mean, what you find online, because clearly, like I was going on Dr. Google, and what you find online is very scary. They say you cannot cure it, you're going to have it forever. In a nutshell, it's going to make it very difficult for you to get pregnant. There's no treatment for it. And so the more I read online, the more I was like, okay, maybe I was very naive. Maybe this isn't happening. So panic set in, and I didn't know where to go from there. And I remember this is the moment where me and you met. At that point, I was trying to have like a biopsy in my uterus, like not the greatest test you can have. And we couldn't even get to the biopsy because my uterus wasn't growing enough. The lining wasn't thickening enough. Yeah, it's like, I don't know, my body went through a cycle of craziness that everything started to go south. Like it was one thing after another. And when I came back and the doctor said, we cannot take the biopsy because the lining isn't thick enough. At that point, I was like, okay, this isn't happening. I don't know what to do, but I have to do something different, right? I cannot keep going on this road. Like I have to change something. And magically, your book popped up on my Facebook. And there was this title. Am I the reason why I'm not getting magically, right? Am I the reason why I'm not getting pregnant? And I was like, you know what? I gotta do something different because this isn't working. And so I just bought the book.
And so it began.
And so it began a long journey.
Wow. Well, and it's so crazy, isn't it? Like, when you're having all these things going wrong, Michaela, I mean, the fact that you were willing to educate yourself, right? Because you could have just been like, yeah, forget it. Like, but there was something in you that said, I need to do something different. What do you think that was? Because the average person just walking down the street, and when they hear adenomyosis, issues with this, metabolic problems, I mean, they'd be like, to hell with this. I don't need to do this. But there was something in you that caused you to do something different. Let's talk about that. So, what do you think that was?
So there was something, and in the midst of all this mess, I was blessed because even though I was very disconnected from my body, very disconnected from my intuition, disconnected from all of that, disconnected from my spiritual connection, all of that was a mess. But I've always had this very strong inner voice. I still do. If I sit in silence, I receive a lot of messages from my body. I listen to myself. That small part of me never died. Okay, now it's a lot bigger because I worked with you. But even before, there was that tiny little part of me that I couldn't silence. And that's why the title of your book was so attractive to me. Because on top of the physical issues, there was a voice in my head stating, you don't deserve this. This is too much of a blessing, a miracle, too much of, I don't know, the greatest desire you can ever have. Like, it's just too much for you. You don't deserve it. And I kept hearing the voice, right? And so I remember one day I was really in my darkest hour on this journey after the biopsy that didn't happen. And I was like, you know what, I'll sit in meditation. I've always been kind of like sort of meditating, not like regularly like right now, but sort of. I was like, I'll sit in meditation and see what happens. And I clearly remember getting a message from myself, my inner voice came back and said, look, the issue isn't in the body. I don't know why all this craziness is happening. I don't know why you got adenomyosis and the scarring in the uterus and all of that. But the issue isn't in the body. But your body wants to get pregnant. Look elsewhere. I sort of knew, like, we have this inner knowing sort of thing that we are so good at ignoring. Like, so good. I got so good for so many years at ignoring my inner knowing, but it doesn't go away. It never goes away. And so at some point, I was really desperate. I was like, well, I'm very determined as a person. I was like, I'm not living like this. I'm not living this halfway through. Like, I gotta go see this through, no matter what happens. And so I gotta look elsewhere. And that's when your book popped up again, magically, right? And I was like, it works like magic. It's like synchronicities at work. Am I the reason I'm not getting pregnant? I was like, well, this voice in my head saying I don't deserve it is not helping. That's for sure. So let's take a look at the book. And then I started reading the book and I was like, oh my God, this woman knows what she's talking about. I could have written the book myself. The determination, how some of us, at least me and you, we are trying to get pregnant like men. We are so much in our masculine. And I was like, oh my God, this is me. Like, I want to crash it. I want a treatment. I want something, but I don't want to look at what's going on inside myself. That's what I was trying to avoid. So.
You use the word blessing, and I think it really is when there's a moment that we wake up from the matrix and we say, okay, what I think is the problem is not actually the problem. And wow, I mean, it is indeed a blessing that you were able to take a beat and say, I need to look somewhere else. I need to look in the place that I'm avoiding. I need to look at me. So walk us through that process, because it's different for every woman. Like, when she comes to the realization that she needs to look at herself, like, because some people, Michaela, think that that's like, oh, you're bad, you're wrong, but that's not what it is at all. What was your experience like?
For me, a few hard things to admit. It was very, very hard. It still is. I had to look at my life, and oh my God, this is so hard to admit, Roseanne, even today. I just wasn't happy. Actually, I was pretty miserable. I was living a miserable life. However, I was not aware of it. I was like going on blind. I don't know. Like, I was just on that road. And I didn't realize how unhappy I was. First of all, I was exhausted, like totally exhausted. Like you would be if you live in your masculine all the freaking time. I was achievement driven. I still am part of me at least, but so much less. And I was attaching, again, very hard to admit it, but I was attaching my worth to my achievements. And therefore, yeah, pretty bad, right? I had to excel in everything I did. And so there's a lot of like excavation you have to do to get to this sort of like realization. But even like getting pregnant, like I'm not going to dive into the details of the story because it's really long, but everything I did was like, okay, I got to do it. It was like a doer sort of thing. Like I have to make this happen. If it doesn't happen, I double down. that was just the energy I was bringing with me everywhere. It worked in some areas of my life, really didn't work in others. Um, but that in itself is exhausting. My
Yeah.
body was
Yeah.
exhausted. I wasn't listening to my body. I was just pushing through. In fact, IUIs didn't work. Double down, go for IVF. I would have gone for another, like, there was no stopping. And so recognizing the exhaustion, which I'm going to borrow your expression, I was wearing it like a badge of honor. Very proud. I was very proud of my exhaustion. That's how crazy it was.
Isn't that a funny thing? Isn't that a funny thing that we wear? I mean, that we live in, I mean, wherever we are in the world, I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, we had the good fortune of meeting in Florence, which was amaze balls, but like, it doesn't matter. This seems to be a problem that crosses oceans, that we wear this exhaustion and this overwork and all this like a badge of honor. And you were paying the price because you were seeing the evidence of it in your body.
If I didn't realize that back then, I would have gotten sick at some point.
Yeah.
Not just fertility sick, like sick. At some point, it would have gotten the best of me. Like, I don't know. I didn't get to that point, but I know. So that was the initial part, recognizing that I had to really step out of that, look for something different. We worked on that. I started, like, I think the first thing that changed my life from your program was recognizing that life was happening for me, not to me. So again, getting out of this sort of victim mentality that life was, I don't know, punishing me for whatever reason. And that was number one. Number two, and this is very personal, but it was a long journey of recovery from a pretty severe mother wound that it's interesting. And again, it's relevant for me. I think it may be relevant for many women, but maybe not for all. In my line, in my mother line, there was a lot of trauma. There is a lot of trauma. It started, it's kind of interesting. I'll tell you the story. You'll see later why it's important. But basically, it started with my grandmother. And I knew that because I had been in therapy before meeting you, but I never really got to understand what was going on. And my grandmother, when she was born, unfortunately, her mother died of birth. So it was a major trauma because my grandmother never had a mom. She grew up in an orphanage. I mean, very, very, very tough start of life. Very good woman, but clearly never had a mother model. No one modeled how to be a mother. So when she became a mother, there was a lot of trauma, a lot of issues, a lot of it's stirring up a lot of stuff, you know. And there's a lot of guilt like coming through the mother line in my family. And my mom got a lot of guilt. My wild guess is that she got it from her mom. And she was not able to work through her own guilt. She still suffers from guilt every day. And I remember we had this conversation one day in the program. We were, I don't know, talking about my mother, and I told you, like, her first name is fear, second name is anxiety, because that's true. It's kind of funny. Kind of funny, not funny.
I will remember that, Michaela. Like, I mean, I think that is the perfect way. I mean, like, you definitely have to write a book about this mother trauma because I don't know if I've ever heard anyone quite put it that way, but it's freaking brilliant.
It's pretty true, which, yeah, it's hilarious on the one hand, not so much on the other. But
Right.
I mean, the problem with all of that is not even my grandmother. My grandma passed away last year at 97. Um, the problem isn't my grandma, and it's not even my mom. The problem is how I receive them, because I
Right.
and again, now another thing that's going to be very hard for me to admit. This is so terrible for me to say. I'm 40 right now, and well, I still do, but particularly before meeting you, I was very much blaming my mom for everything that goes wrong in my life. So, and I mean, yeah, I feel really ashamed, to say that, because I'm a grown ass woman. But every time
It's
something
you're
goes
not alone though, Michaela. Like I want to assure you that you're not alone. Like it doesn't matter what age you are. I mean, the fact that you woke up to what was happening is amazing. It's quite a testament to who you are and the gift of your own awareness and curiosity about it. So good.
good, very painful to realize in the beginning. But yeah, it's a gift. It is. Hindsight 2020 is great, right? So I am so freaking grateful to this journey for waking me up, because if I had my child when I wanted, and this is something you said about yourself as well, but I think at some point we got to realize that if I had my child back then in 2020, I would have never gone there. Never. It was so painful, uh, so necessary, but I would have very much, like, in my human experience, I would have very much wanted to avoid that. So, if I
Right.
get pregnant, I would have not gotten to that place. So,
Wow.
yeah, basically, that was the crux of my work. Like, just looking at my relationship with my mother, which, if I say it now, it seems so obvious, but it wasn't that obvious back then. It was very complicated growing up with, fear and anxiety and guilt and shame and all of that. You can imagine. Very, very complex relationship. It still is, and it's probably gonna be forever. Like, but I am different now. And now I feel I have this compassion for my mom that I never had before. Before, I was just blaming her, not taking responsibility for myself, not understanding my power. So it was completely out of my power. And me becoming a mother was stirring up a lot of fear in myself, because I never had a model that I wanted to follow, or like to even actually, I was trying to do everything different than my mom. So motherhood was very scary. It still is. Um, I think when you have a complex relationship with your mom, it does add a little bit. I think motherhood is scary for everybody. When the relationship is so complicated with your mom, there's another layer there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean because this isn't just about the relationship with your mother. It's even bigger than that because you start to look at your own capacity to mother and your relationship with your mother and the relationship with your grandmother were also the very first models you had, Michaela, about the feminine. And what you see from them might not exactly be feminine. It might be quite the opposite.
Very true.
What did you notice?
Um, in First of all, in myself, a lot of change. Like, initially, there was a lot of enmeshment with my mother, and so I wasn't very good at setting boundaries, which is another issue. Like, it's a pretty big one, because of the way in which I saw my grandma behaving. And again, I just want to state this: this isn't about blaming them at this point. It's just
No.
recognizing the behavior. There's no blame. We're all just in our power and victims at the same time. Like, yeah, there's a trauma. That's all. We got to face the trauma. But I've never seen a mother being nurturing. I have never seen a mother being supportive. I had never seen a mother being empowering of a daughter. Quite the opposite. And I kind of thought that I didn't want that for my children. I was trying to do everything at a subconscious level, I was trying to do everything in my power to avoid repeating the cycle. And I think
Mm.
with what I know now, I think that my body kind of knew that I couldn't get pregnant back then because it wasn't what I wanted. It wasn't the way in which I wanted to be a mother. It wasn't the way in which I wanted to continue this legacy and carry on. And I think my body was trying to protect me at some level.
Isn't that fascinating? I mean, the ability to recognize that, Michaela, says so much about you and how you've grown, that you can see that not getting what you wanted was a form of protection because there was something more that needed to be addressed. It's fascinating. I mean, and clearly there was something in you that continued to pursue that, because there was something about you that I distinctly remember from the program. You were always there, like right there, ready, hand up, asking questions, contributing, like really in it. It was like you very much took this in. Like it was like there was this mission that you were on. It was very clear to me. And you were always there, like ready to learn. So, what are some of the biggest changes that you noticed in yourself, and where did they take you?
Oh God, where to start? I've changed about everything. About everything. So it's gonna be difficult to summarize it. But um the first thing was learning to forgive. Forgiveness was a big piece, as it would be with the mother wound and all the issue that I was speaking about. Another thing was just, in simple words, growing up. I needed to grow up. I feel like I was pretty much still a child, like wasn't ready to take responsibility for my life, wanted to look around to see who I could blame. It was either my mother or a man or the universe or whatever. I was waiting for someone else to save me so much. I had attached this feeling to a man for a very long time. And well, that never never happened. Right? So I kind of
Wow.
like wanted a man to come save me. Maybe that's why I didn't find the right relationship. Um, and then at that point, I just shifted my focus to a child at some point, right? So even getting pregnant was a way, again, very difficult to admit this, but it was just a way. Well, I wanted to be a mother. I knew I wanted to be. But at that precise moment, it was a way to try and fix my life instead of like responsibility for me. That was like, it's pretty horrible. But when I realized that, it opened my eyes, Roseanne, and there was no looking back.
You know, Michaela, that is not even horrible. Like, I mean, I know that, I get why you're saying that, but what, like, just think about what it took, because there are people listening to this that are doing the same thing and they don't have any idea. And what it does in your life when you recognize that you're trying to fix something with something else, right? Instead of looking inward and looking at your own emptiness, like it changes everything, because now the mother that you are going to be is not repeating the pattern of your own mother, right? You're in a position now that your baby is not going to be your crutch. Your baby is a beautiful addition to your life, and they're coming into a life with their mother, that their mother is not confused.
Yeah. Sorry.
Wow.
So emotional. But
What a gift. No, don't apologize, girl. This is big. This is big. This is like, if you're going to have, remember, from the program, these aren't tears. This is truth escaping your eyeballs. But what was coming up for you as I
Um,
was saying that?
yeah, I was thinking of the courage that it took for me to get there. I didn't, well, and again, I was always very good at being in my masculine. So maybe there's a little bit of that. But I did not give myself a way out. It was like, okay, I'm on this journey. I'm gonna see it through. I'm gonna go all in, no matter what happens. At some point, well, you gotta grieve so much that you don't know if you're gonna see the light, at the end of the tunnel. You're just gonna have a little bit of faith. But as you would say, I remember you using this expression. It was very specific, very precise for me. The payoff is gonna be grand. It's very worth it.
Oh,
It is totally worth it. Every tear, every headache, every bad moment you're going to have, it's totally worth it. The moment I realized that nothing could fix my life if I wasn't able to just get on it, steer the ship myself, it was in my hands. And I even realized, I think it was one of your podcasts, I don't remember exactly, but it was you saying this at some point, that if you're not happy in your life, a baby's not going to make you happy. And that was a moment of truth for me. And I really realized that back then in 2020, I was living in a miserable way. I was just trying to have a crutch, like you said before, to help me get up. But that isn't it. You got to find it in yourself.
wow. Wow. So what were some of the things? I mean, you were talking about healing the mother wound and really working on that, taking a look at relationships because you were no longer looking for a man to save you. Like, tell us a little bit about where you are today and how doing those things has helped you get here.
Yeah. So, just a little reminder back to my story. So, it started with my grandma and her trauma with her mom. And I say this, there's a reason why I say this. So, that's the starting point. At some point during the journey, I gotta say that from when I started your program to today, it's been about 3 years. Like, it took me like a long journey, but I decided to do it like this. I didn't want to, at some point, I slowed down. I didn't want to get pregnant right away because I sort of knew there was something else I had to work on before. And my project became me. My mission became me, not having a baby. I shifted my mission, my desire, my everything. It wasn't just like, okay, I want to get pregnant no matter what. No, I want to be happy no matter what, whatever it takes. And I realized along the way that a lot of things aren't in my hands anyways. Like, I can't, not in my hands, not even in the doctor's hands. May get pregnant, maybe not, I don't know, but it's really in God's hands at some point. So I let go of control completely, but I was like, I'm not going to let go of me. I'm going to work on me, and I'm going to make this life something that I like. And I started doing that, Roseanne. Like, it was amazing. Like, I went on a number of trips with some friends that were incredible, the best trips of my life. Changed career, well, changed job and changed career, changed house. Like, yeah, I just started rolling in a different way and started moving the pieces of the puzzle in my life differently. And I was like, at some point, I was so deep in my surrender, and I'm so deep in my spirituality and faith right now, that I was like, I'm going to leave it up to God. If it wants to make it happen, it'll happen at some point, right? I still have to go to the clinic. Otherwise it won't happen for sure. But yeah, I was just like, I'm going to follow the signs. I'm just going to follow the signs and see what happens. So last year, in March, my grandmother passed away, age 97. And it was a big moment because, again, it's related to all this family trauma that I was working on. And I've been doing quite a lot of like looking at ancestral healing, um, looking at like generational trauma sort of healing. And so, I was like, you know what, I may just try and go for a transfer of the embryos I have in Barcelona. At this point, I'm 40. But I was like, I'm not gonna rush. I'm just gonna follow the thread. So if the results come back okay, I'll go. Otherwise, I'll go for another trip. I'll postpone it, whatever. I'll see what life is proposing to me, and I'll just follow the breadcrumbs. So I'm working with this doctor here in Italy, and he's a great doctor, like just the best quality care, honestly, and a very nice person. You could call him at night, he would answer, like just the best. And so we tried and work on a protocol that would work for me. So I actually found a treatment for adenomyosis. So not true that it's untreatable, by the way, because put me on this treatment and adenomyosis went away. So not very true that it's untreatable. But anyways, I worked with him. And at some point, we were looking at me going for a transfer around January, February, March this year, 2024. The results came back pretty good, but I was still in that mentality. I was still in that mindset. I'll follow the signs. If there is a stop, I'll stop. If something tells me not to go, I won't go. I don't want to waste the embryos anyways, right? I only got 4. I'll see what my body's telling me, because I know it's not in my hands. If my body's telling me, okay, well, giving me the get-go, I will go. Otherwise, I won't. And I was pretty happy with my decision. Well, long story short, my grandmother, who died last year, was born on March 6th, 1926, so a few years ago. And my transfer was set on March 5th, so the day before. But this is not all. I was preparing myself and I was like, okay, well, everything seems to go in the right direction. So I was pretty hopeful. Like it seemed like my body was ready. But my doctor looked at the results and he was like, well, yeah, but I want the lining to be a little thicker than it is. So we got to wait another day. And the transfer got moved to March 6th. My grandmother's birthday. I was like, I swear I didn't make it happen. I couldn't make it happen if I wanted to. Okay. And I was like, I cannot believe that I am going to have a transfer on my grandma's birthday, who just passed away. And so, on March 6th, I'm in Barcelona having the transfer. And as soon as I got the transfer, we transferred 2 embryos. As soon as I was there, I left the room. I had the best day, by the way, the best trip. I had a lot of fun. I planned it in a way that was fun. I love animals, so I made sure there were a lot of animals involved. I just made it in a way that made me happy instead of miserable. And it was great. It was fantastic. A lot of good food and stuff like that. So March the 6th, have the transfer. And a part of me knew that I was pregnant already. Like I left the room and I was like, I felt it. I felt something coming onto me. And it was like, okay, now you're going to know what it means to be a mother. Like I had the message coming through. But then you know how we are, right? So we are spiritual and then we're back in our body and then we carry on with life. So I was like, okay, well, get it together, Michaela. You still have to go back home and wait for a couple of weeks, right?
Get it together. You just had a perfect day in Barcelona. Blow it all off, right? Like
actually, I had a week.
Isn't that funny how we?
Yeah.
Oh, a week. Oh, that's beautiful. That's wonderful.
I wanted to make it like a fun
Isn't,
trip, not just like a.
yeah. Isn't that a funny pattern of like having all of these beautiful things come into our lives, but we talk ourselves out of it. We tell ourselves it's idiotic or, I mean, wow. So you have this wonderful week and then you go back. Do you go back to Italy or do you go back to London?
To Italy at this point, where I have my
Okay.
home, and here is the fun part. So I go back to Italy, and I don't forget. I know that I'm pregnant. Like I know it in my bones that I am. By the way, my embryos were untested, so the chances weren't even great. And I think I remember telling you this. My progesterone levels were so low that even my doctor, my OBGYN said, I don't know how you got pregnant with these levels of progesterone, because like it's, I don't know. But anyways,
I remember you telling me that. I remember you told me that in Italy. Like, holy cow.
yeah, it was
Wow.
like when he saw that the result, the blood test results, it was like the embryo must have been like really, really a good one, because otherwise you wouldn't implant with this level of progesterone. Like it's impossible. It did everything by itself. But anyways, I'm waiting this couple of weeks, and I already know it, but um, yeah, I don't have it confirmed yet. So end of the story is this. Back to my grandmother. She passed away last year, like I said. And when she passed away, it was March the 20th, 2023, which is spring equinox. And I kind of like have this, yeah, I love looking at these things, because when she passed away, I felt like it was a new beginning for her. I wasn't thinking of me getting pregnant at that point, but it was like, okay, she's kind of like transitioning, and this is a new beginning, because spring equinox, that's what it means, right? You're beginning something new. So now I'm waiting for my pregnancy test. And the clinic wants me to test on March 18th. And I'm like, you know what? Actually, no, I'm not testing on March 18th. I'm going to wait for March 20th. It's not only a couple of days, anyways. Right? And I'll see what happens. But I just want to wait and see, because I know my grandma is in this somehow. Somewhere she's in this. She's kind of like looking at me from there, and blessing this journey, right? So because I know she's in it, I want to wait and honor the day that she passed away. So I waited. I actually had to argue with the clinic, because they were on my back. On the 18th, they were like, you have to test, you have to go test. And I was like, no, I'm not testing today. There's no way I'm testing. You gotta wait a couple of days. They really stressed me out, but I did wait. And then on March 20th, I went to my favorite place here in Rome, took a pregnancy test, peed on the stick, and it came back positive. So, yeah, pretty intense.
Transfer on the day that your grandmother was born in 1927. And then you find out you're pregnant on the day she passed 12 months later.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I also gotta say, I mean, because generational trauma, or like the ancestral lineage, like, and this is for everybody, passes on quite a lot of trauma to everyone, but also a lot of blessings. It's not just the trauma that they pass on. We gotta recognize that, yeah, I mean, there are bad things, there are traumas, there are things that are unresolved, but also there's a whole lot of good stuff that they give us. And I gotta say, I am in a totally different financial position now to take care of this child on my own, thanks to my grandmother, because she did leave me.
Wow.
It's kind of like divinely, it seemed like divinely orchestrated that I got pregnant after she passed away, because she left me her house and a number of other stuff that is gonna make a massive change in my life financially. So yeah, there was the trauma, but there's also how like a ton of support.
Wow. Wow. I mean, this is, well, and you're making a very interesting and important point here, showing, because it's very easy for us to get swept up in the idea that it's all trauma, it's all bad. But what you're pointing us to, pointing out that we need to be looking at is the fact that two things can be true at the same time. I think you remember hearing me say that all the time, is like, yes, there's trauma. And in that same space is the possibility of healing. Both of those things exist. They coexist at the same time in the same place. And you are also raising such an important point, because that trauma is stored in our bodies. Like, this is not even up for debate. We know that traumatic events change our DNA. We look at Holocaust survivors and it changes their peripheral vision, like all kinds of crazy things over time that we have been able to see and learn about. That this pain, once it's released from your body, it opens up so many other things. And I think when we think about your grandmother and the lessons she gave you and the gifts she gave you, both through her experience and where you live today, this means that your family tree changes with you.
Yeah.
The
That was
trauma can stop with you.
that was my dream actually all along, that my family tree would change with me. It was the plan all along. I think if we want to talk about, my higher self or soul plans or whatever, I think that was the plan, whether I had children or not. Um, that was what I originally wanted to do besides motherhood. And I am so freaking blessed that I got to do this. And then I didn't get pregnant like in 2020 because I really, really, really needed this journey. I really needed it.
Wow.
I wouldn't wish it on anyone,
Wow.
but I needed it.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that the funny thing though, Michaela, is some of the darkest moments in our lives. Like, we never we don't pray for that, to happen to anybody else, but they become such a source of richness and healing, and almost always a springboard to abundance in our own lives of so many different kinds. I mean, like, think about where you are today. I mean, how many weeks along are you now?
26,
26. Oh my goodness.
healthy baby.
26 weeks.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
What a
And
wild ride.
I know I live this pregnancy in a different way because of the journey. I'm gonna live being a mother in a different way because of this journey. I don't think, like, with all the stress that we go through, even with pregnancy, if I didn't have to live through this journey, I wouldn't have made it. Because pregnancy is scary, like there are so many tests you have to pass and everything can go wrong at many different points. I was so calm and collected. And I repeated something else you said that was incredibly transformational for me to realize. And that is, this isn't about you. Let it go. It's not about you. This pregnancy isn't about you, because I made it all about me. It was all about me. It was judgment of me, my body, what it could do, what it couldn't do. But it isn't. It's not about me. And so I was able to just let it go and leave it and say, hey, baby, I mean, I'm here. I want you. If you want to come, I'm here. But if you don't, I'm still here.
Wow. That is such a dramatic transformation, Michaela, that it's just extraordinary. Like, from meeting you and hearing all of the dreams and the aspirations that you have, and I love that you pointed out that you consciously slowed this down. Because, I mean, do you like that is just a testament to how powerful you became. Because, you know, I tell women all the time, sometimes you have to slow down to speed up. Like there's this healing that you do, this slowing down, because it isn't just about getting there as fast as you can. The point is to get there, you know, like, and you are demonstrating that you knew that there were some things within you, because what you said was my mission became me. That was so freaking brilliant, because having been through what you went through, grandma, mom, there was something in you that knew that you wanted better, so that when this day came, that the cycle ends with you. And like, think about, I mean, this is such a beautiful just testimony of the power of this kind of healing, because when you bring your baby home into the house of your grandmother, that's now your home, it all changes. Like, and think about like your connection with your grandmother too. You can always be talking to her and thanking her, because she'll be able to see her great grandchild thrive in a home that she loved. It's just beautiful. I mean, like, I across the board. I mean, this is simply mind blowing to me. I mean, I couldn't be more fucking proud of you right now, like on so many levels. I mean, I was proud of you before, but like meeting this woman, and like even when I met you in Florence, there was an ease about you that was very clear to me. And I think you were like 12 weeks pregnant
Was
around that time. And
11
yeah,
weeks.
yeah, yeah. And it was just, I mean, you could have, for as long as you were trying to have this baby and all the different things that you went through, you could have been freaked out, and like, you're just mellow. Like, I don't know if it was the air in Florence or what, but I was like, she's so calm. This is so great.
I had the genetic testing the week after, which was the scariest test of all of them for me,
Yeah.
because my embryos were untested. And yeah, like we weren't sure the pregnancy was even viable. And so, yeah, I could have been really freaked out, but I wasn't, because at that point, I really, really, I had this surrendering sort of feeling in me, saying, it's not about me. If the baby wants to come, the baby will come. And if not, again, there's nothing I can do about it. It's not about me. So just let it go. Just let it go. But also, because of all the signs with my grandmother and how it happened, I've had this very strong feeling that this pregnancy was going to see through to the end. I still do. And even in the beginning, I haven't told you the whole thing. I mean, there are so many details, but like in the beginning, there were some tests that came back, like the HCG wasn't doubling great. And if you look online, everybody would say this isn't viable. But I remember being still and being in the knowing that, okay, I feel that my baby's coming, and it's coming now. This is it. And so I could, yeah, remain still and just leave it through.
So many bombs you are dropping here, so many gold nuggets of wisdom. I mean, think about it. Like, from, if we take this all the way back to the beginning, Michaela, where they said adenomyosis cannot be treated. You have scarring in your uterus, your lining's not thick enough, you have a metabolic condition, you know, all of these crazy things, to where you are today, where you could have been freaked out because your progesterone was not high enough. People were like, how the hell did you get pregnant with this low progesterone? Your HCG not doubling, this baby's not viable, to a healthy pregnancy, and you're 26 weeks
26, yeah.
pregnant. Like,
Yeah.
with a healthy baby. You know everything you need to know about this baby right now.
Yeah.
Wow. So, what would you say to the women listening? Like, if you wanted women to take a lesson away from what you are sharing here, I mean, there's so many, but if you were going, if you wanted to have women zero in on one from your unique experience, what would you want them to know?
I think it, it I don't know, the first one that comes to mind is really like take responsibility for your own journey because it encompasses so many. Don't leave it up to the doctors, don't leave it up to Dr. Google for sure, but also don't blame it on others. It's not a punishment. Just take responsibility and look at how you are living through this journey because you're going to find out a lot of golden nuggets or a lot of personal stuff. You know, this is my story. May not be relevant for everybody. They may not have generational trauma. I don't know. But you will find something in there. There will be. Like the keys are in the journey, wherever they take you then. I think
That is so beautiful. Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, Michaela, because it takes a lot of humility to be willing to share the things that you've shared, and it's obvious you did the work, and it's obvious that you have created a foundation that you can really build this family with. And I couldn't be happier for you, woman. I'm so stinking proud of you, and I'm just so delighted to see you in this place on your terms, happy and well taken care of. I mean, this is really everything kind of coming full circle. So thank you so much for sharing that. And it's such an inspiration, and it's going to change so many lives. I mean,
my
I
pleasure.
think that, yeah, and it's so generous of you, because I think the place that we fear to look is so often where the treasure is, and you are willing to do that, and you're living proof of the power of doing that today. So thank you, woman, and Tanti Bachi. I'm so excited. I can't wait to see the pictures.
Totally. Roseanne, can I tell you one thing before we
Of
go?
course.
I don't know if you know this, you may or you may not, but I had booked this interview with you before I got pregnant. When I booked the
That's
interview,
right.
I wasn't pregnant. It was last year. And I just wanted to point that out because the other lesson is like, I was so much in my faith that this would happen. We changed the date a couple of times, but yeah, the booking happened last year. I had such a faith and a strong belief that I this was happening for me that I was like, I'm gonna go all in. Let's book it. So I wasn't sure you knew that. I just wanted to say that.
No, you know what? I remember that, but it's so funny to me because, like, and this is also like why it's so surreal at times to have gone from being a listener to a guest, because I unquestionably have heard other women say that, like, they make the decision, they're showing up on the podcast, and I'm like, hey, if that's what it takes for you to have the breakthrough and get on the podcast and get pregnant, then hey, line up, let Suzanne know when you're showing up on the podcast, and that's great. Because, like, I think what it is too, though, and I love that you raised this before we go, is you made a decision, Michaela. Do you remember me shouting about that all the time? Like, you have to make a freaking decision, and that's what you did. And, like, even if you miss the date, you do exactly what you did, Mama. Is you change it, but you know where you're headed.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Wow. Wow. Oh, you are so welcome. Thank you for blessing us with all of that. Like, if people that are listening to this, if your hair wasn't standing up like this from hearing your grandmother's story, like, if that doesn't give you something to believe in and maybe change your attitude about faith and receiving and healing and trauma can be your greatest asset if you use it wisely, then they've missed the point of what you've shared here. And so, but luckily we have a smart audience. They're going to take the lesson, Michaela. So thank you so much, woman. I love you. I'm so happy to see you so happy. And I can't wait to see the baby pictures.
Of course. Thank you, Roseanne.
Love this episode of the Fearlessly Fertile podcast? Subscribe now and leave an awesome review. Remember, the desire in your heart to be a mom is there because it was meant for you. When it comes to your dreams, keep saying hell yes.